All right, it's the off season. You know things are going to be weird with the Padres. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On MLB Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to a Locked On MLB, Locked On Padres crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And we are, say it with me, Javier Reyes, we are the number
one sports podcast network in the biz.
Network. Dun, 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 dun. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can bet, what is it, just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Find us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they call it these days, on Instagram. I'm your pal Sullivan, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And if you're going to leave us a note, make sure you use that hashtag EverydaySully. Helps us find the notes there. But as you can tell, if you're watching or if you're listening or if you're just part of the collective unconscious, you know that I'm not flying solo today. Ladies and gentlemen, friend of the show, been on this show for years.
Yeah, absolutely. Javier Reyes, man. What's up? What's going on, man? You were my first show on this network, actually. Shout out to Sully. Was one of the first people. I remember when I first joined the group DM, you get the emails when they hire you and all that stuff. And he was like, all right, you little chump. Okay, here's how it works. I'm the boss around here, and you have to come on my show first before you do your own. And then he threatened me, did all these other things off scene.
Vig, lots of Vig. You know?
And there you go. Here we are, right? And that was back in, that might have actually been 2019, late 2019 when we did that too, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, I think that was pre-COVID.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was pre-COVID. Yeah. Might have been 2019 too, but either way, lots has changed. Some for the better, some for the worse. And I think that is the San Diego Padres story in many ways. So we're going to talk about it.
I do remember walking around your podcast when you first joined. I said, nice podcast you have here. It'd be a shame if anything happened to it. Hey, before we jump right into talking Padres, and also with the talking Padres, we go into basically talking about the state of the contenders and possible state of the American League West, National League West. You said American League. Let's go over the trivia question, which was, who was the first All-Star in Texas Rangers history? And I got a couple of people who did I forget to put so we had Scott Campbell, aka MIP, said Buddy Bell. Incorrect. Ken Mitchell said let's see, my dad's all-time favorite player, Frank Howard. That is not correct, but I'll tell you who got it correct, who not only got it correct, but also made a correction for me. Where did I put that here? Hold on a second. Let me remove that one here. Argonaut Comedy got Toby Harrah, and he and Mark Fahey both pointed out the same thing, as I forgot to answer the trivia question about Tom Seaver and the 5 Hall of Famers from a couple of days before, which was when Tom Seaver got – the answer is Toby Harrah. Argonaut Comedy got right, and Argonaut Comedy and Mark Fahey both pointed out. I forgot to answer a question from a few days ago, which was when Tom Seaver got his 300th win, who were the 5 Hall of Famers who were on that in that box score that day. They were Seaver, Carlton Fisk, and Harold Baines on the Chicago White Sox, and Dave Winfield and Ricky Henderson on the New York Yankees. That's right. Tom Seaver won his 300th game as a member of the Chicago White Sox. Did I freeze? Am I frozen?
You're frozen a little bit on my screen, yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I'm going to keep talking. And and by the way, if Phil Niekro had started for the Yankees that day, there would have been 6 Hall of Famers there. All right.
How about that?
But let's talk a little bit. The San Diego Padres did what they did so well, and that is they played competitive baseball all year, and they decided to recreate Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom and reach in and grab the heart of every Padres fan, hold it in front of them till it caught on fire. Yet another year where a do-or-die playoff game was lost by the San Diego Padres. This time it was against the Chicago Cubs, where Andrew Kittredge came in after Brad Keller decided to hit every single batter he faced.
Oh yeah.
He got Jake Cronenworth to ground out and Freddie Fermin to hit a deep fly ball to center field that clinched the series for Chicago. Another wonderful 90-some-odd win season for San Diego, coming up short. Before we dive into what the future looks like, just give me your thoughts about this season, which for a while looked like the Padres were going to actually contend to win the West.
I would say, just for the end of it, I will say it wasn't quite Temple of Doom death this year. I think that was 2024, right?
Yeah,
because they were to beat the Dodgers right after signing Shohei, et cetera, not score for 24 innings, all that stuff. This year was more like, I don't know, the end of like Dog Day Afternoon or or say, you know what I mean? Like it was
wow.
The Departed, when spoiler alert, like Leo gets killed, right?
Yeah.
Like quick, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was immediate, and you're like, oh no, this stinks, right when you thought you had some hope. I'd say it was more like that. Temple of Doom was last year. 2024 was not only Temple of Doom, it was like the end of Evangelion, it was the end of every horror, The Last of Us, right? Like whatever horrid thing you could think of, that was before. But then as a whole, you bring up a great point. Just like they were actually in contention for the West this year, especially with a lot of the Dodgers starting pitching being hurt for majority of the season. The Padres started off awesome, especially trade deadline. They get Ramon Laureano, Ryan O'Hearn, Mason Miller, some other guy, and they perform well, but then they lost really badly to the Dodgers this year. And last year they also had a chance, but they kind of like got better in the second half is what happened to them. So it was a little bit too little too late. Well, this year it was, you had the chance to beat the Dodgers this year. You really did, in terms of the regular season, to try and win that division, which they keep having a monopoly on. And unfortunately, they did not. They had some really bad losses against them. Dodgers fans will, of course, point out that we brutalized Shohei Ohtani for no reason. Forget the fact that Tatis got hit 4 times in that series and Jose Iglesias got hurt. Padres people don't matter, Sully, as you know. Only thing that matters is big guys in LA. That's all that matters.
That's right. All that matters.
But it was really frustrating the way the season went. But I would say the reason it wasn't as brutal, this loss, while yes, that game 3, the Bogarts bad call and all of that, I just felt like, aside from that stretch after the trade deadline when Laureano was one of the best players acquired
in the National League, that was one of the best. That's what and Andrew Vaughn were the 2 of the best pickups made by trades. Who had that on their FanDuel bet?
No, I don't think anybody did. But it was big, but for the most part, this felt like a team that was good at winning games, but not winning against the best teams. They were not like 2024. They had a below 500 record against teams that were above 500. They just didn't really compete well against the best. I never really saw it. And there's a couple reasons for that. Michael King was hurt all year. Dylan Cease had one of the worst contract seasons for a pitcher of his caliber that I've ever seen. And, you had some injuries with Jason Adam and Ramon Laureano, but even still, it was, I think, the best thing to talk about for the Padres and the rage is just the big budget and just having these stars that don't always show up. Manny Machado really needs to be given a lot more criticism for being a 688 OPS player in the playoffs in his career. And Fernando Tatis Jr., he gets a little bit of an excuse because he carried them every time they were in the postseason before this year, but he was also quite bad too. Jake Cronenworth didn't even get on base once. It was tough, but the problem with the Padres in total is also just like, this is a team that keeps being set up to win now. It's not a team anymore that's on the rise. It's a team that's kind of there. So now you have to start seeing the results, and unfortunately they haven't delivered yet.
Well, when we come back, we're going to talk about what those results could be, because, well, for a team that's a 90-some-odd win team virtually every single year, they have a lot of upheaval, and this year is no different. Hey, the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the National Basketball Association. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride a hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets with a same-game parlay. That's French for speak, for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making a late push, or if you're not watching your team play. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the National Basketball Association. And what a fun time it is to be the official betting partner of the National Basketball Association. There we go. All right, so in the offseason, Mike Shildt, who did a really good job, won Manager of the Year with the Cardinals, led them on a great winning streak to get to the playoffs in 2021. Bye-bye. He comes over to the Padres, gets the Padres up 2-1, facing a bullpen game for the Dodgers, looking like, hey, folks, looks like it's the Padres' year. Now, but they do manage to go to the postseason in consecutive years. Bye-bye. And I guess they brought in, it was either a former reliever or the 14th caller. I don't remember who it was to get the new manager. So much for any thoughts of like a Joe Madden or a respected veteran. They brought in. Tell us about the new skipper and why. And I guess they tried to see if they could get the late Gary Coleman to recreate his role in The Kid from Left Field, the 1980 made-for-TV movie that I obsess over because it's the only time the Padres have ever won the World Series. Tell us about what's going on, why they changed managers, and what the hell is going on here.
I mean, the Craig Stammen hire, for those who don't know, he's going to be the manager for the Padres this next year. And that comes just a week or so before the news that they are now looking to sell the team. So let's just say Padres fans are preparing for the worst, I think is the way to describe it right now. They're wondering, like, was this just a cheapskate hire? I don't think it was. I think this is just business as usual. And I think it's more... I think if I had to gun to my head, it'd be Preller the last 2 years has gone with old school, managers that do their own thing. Maybe he's like, all right, we tried that twice. Now we're going back to someone who's a little bit closer to me, can be an extension of the front office, maybe be a little bit more progressive thinking and change up the lineups a little bit. But it's hard to ignore. And while they both had a lot of issues, both Bob Melvin and Mike Shildt, Shildt we'll talk about in a second. The bottom line is their winningest seasons under Preller have come with Mike Shildt and Bob Melvin. So I think that sometimes you have to just look at the wins. Unlike football, which is not a sport where you should judge the quarterback just by the wins. In baseball, you should maybe judge the skipper by just how many games that they win. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out, especially with their lack of prospect capital and their lack of necessarily the same budget that they might have once had. So there's going to be a lot of questions there. But with Craig Stammen, it's a lot. I talked about it on my show that Albert Pujols was being interviewed forever, and it felt like maybe they were going to go that direction. Let's just get like this mega super big budget like guy that will be all over the news, would sell a lot of tickets by himself, frankly. I will say he was not implicated is the wrong word, but he was brought up in the Tyler Skaggs trial. So it's possible that could be a reason for why not only the Angels, but also the Padres passed on. They just don't want to, get involved in some muddy waters there. I recommend everyone go check out the latest reports on that. I haven't been following it a little bit, but it's not great, man. It's really not, you know what I mean? And I don't know what they're going to be able to do in free agency to offset it. I don't know what they're going to be able to do in terms of prospects to offset it, but it does feel like AJ Preller was just up at like 3 a.m. after drinking with his buddies and just texted his friend. It was just like, Craig, you want to be the GM, whatever, you want to be the manager, go for it. Right. Like, I understand the thinking that he was, as you said before, the 14th call, especially given that they had Ruben Niebla and Carlos Hernandez and a bunch of other guys that were on the roll that were rumored. Turns out the fourth guy that was rumored might be Craig Stammen, the one that we didn't know the exact name. And I hope that he does great. Hey, managers got to start somewhere. And I think it's going to be very interesting. There was a great Ken Rosenthal article, and I say that with a lot of emphasis on like great by Ken Rosenthal, who's an enemy of the Padres nation these days. That was just about like, we're going to see, is this hiring of a Tennessee college coach going to work? These guys with a lack of experience, is it going to work? We don't know. So I'm just hoping that the Padres can stay competitive, man. That's all I'm hoping. I don't want to go back to the dark days. That's the thing that every Padres fan's scared of right now.
Yeah, Bert, I'm not a big fan of hiring someone with zero experience. zero experience as a manager on any level.
Mhm.
I've been proven wrong a couple of times, but most of the times, if I'm running a team and I want to end this rumor, I'm not. I would do what some of these other teams have done, like with Derek Shelton and with like Skip Schumacher, to get someone who has managed before. So get someone's second shot. A lot of
Mhm.
times you see a lot of success happen with the second shot. I mean, Francona is the greatest example of that. But you see other examples of people who, Dave Roberts had he managed one game for the Padres and had experience on coaching staffs. But you'll see sometimes you want someone to have Charlie Manuel is another example. Joe Torre had several shots and was able to sort of dust himself off and go like, okay, I know what works and what doesn't work. Or someone with minor league managing experience, instead of like, here's someone who it's the best man at his wedding being
Yeah.
hired. I think Walt Weiss being hired by the Braves is a great example. He's someone who managed with Colorado. He's been there, he's done that, and so you give him the car keys. I It's always amazing how many people can win Manager of the Year and then be out of work in 2 years and never be on anyone's short list. As a manager. Brandon Hyde was Manager of the Year in 2023, and I have a better chance of managing a baseball team in the major league level than he does. And by the way, Gary Coleman's character in The Kid from Left Field was named Jackie Robinson Cooper, and his dad, played by Robert
Yeah.
Guillaume, was Larry Cooper. That's neither here nor there. I look at I love the Padres have become a really, really fun franchise to watch. The fans have come out in droves. They are
Yeah.
they are the blueprint of how to put a successful product on the field in a traditional small market, and that is invest in the team, make sure it's a great ballpark experience, and embrace the fan experience. And the only thing they've lacked is a championship in this. If they won in either the year they went to the NLCS against Philadelphia or last year when they were up 2-1 on Los Angeles, and if they had won games 4 or 5 and faced the Mets, I think they would have punched the Mets in the mouth.
Mm.
Whether or not they would have done against the Yankees, I don't know, and neither do you. But they certainly were a very good team, and I think a better constructed team. When you have windows of opportunity like this, you look at the Rangers, who they're going to rebuild, but they got their title in it. Or the
Yeah, they did.
Royals,
Yeah.
when they had their window, they got their title in it. The Nationals, when they had their window, they got their title in it. So therefore, no one looks at. There's no longing of what could have been. This is
Yeah.
a frustrating time because they did what you wanted to do. They invested in the team. They brought in stars. They kept a core of players together that fans, it's like fans can like it. You know what? I know the Eric Hosmer signing didn't work, but it was a harbinger of like, what if we
Yeah.
aren't
That's fair.
doormats?
That's fair.
And you don't know what influence Hosmer had on some of the other players and whatnot, but it is kind of scary when you see what Arise and Cease and several other players are free agents this
Yeah.
year. I mean, that's a lot of whack-a-mole to try to fill all those spots. And I think King is a free agent. And
Yep. King's a free agent. That's the problem. It's that it feels like 2024, the more that time goes on, was the year. And I will say that is one area that Mike Shildt does get some flack for, is like starting Dylan Cease on very few days rest, for that game 4. And then he gets lit up predictably. I will say I don't blame Shildt as much for that. There are other things that I think Shildt deserves criticism for. Starting Arise continually second in the lineup when he hadn't been doing anything all year and continually was bringing down the offense just out of veteran respect for some reason. Ryan O'Hearn didn't start as much as he should have. Gavin Sheets should have been starting every day over Luis Arise. But overall, like, bottom line is the Padres offense didn't show up. Like, that is a big, big thing about this team, that everyone's like, you can't have these big, players that are in your face and really exciting and then not show up, right? And now part of that is, unlike the Royals and the Rangers, the Padres, and I would argue that this gives credence even more to how they are actually, media won't tell you this, they'll tell you that the Dodgers spending a lot is great for baseball, right? But I think the Padres still continuing to try, despite the fact that they're going up against the Avengers in their own division, unlike those other two teams. I still think is really admirable in a lot of ways. But that's also why it's tough, right? You had them last year when they weren't at their best, and they hadn't signed Snell and brought Teoscar back, and Yamamoto didn't pitch as much, right? And Glasnow was hurt. And this year, you could have maybe your team wasn't as good as theirs, but their team wasn't healthy, so you could have at least won the division. You had chances, and now you're like, well, the Dodgers' injury luck might get better. They might go out and sign Murakami this offseason. So there's this.
I think they will. I absolutely think they will. I mean, they're already transforming the team into the Japanese WBC club. I mean,
exactly.
And they have a hole at third base. And I've had people. I said that the other day in my free agent prediction show, and I had more than one person say, "Well, what would they do with Max Muncy?" I said, "What do you mean? What would they do with Max Muncy? Let Max Muncy play somewhere else. That's why you have Max Muncy. The fact you have a player who can play the outfield, first base, second base, third base, that's incredibly valuable. So if you have an everyday third baseman, it makes Muncy even more valuable because you could give some people a day off on the DH, and maybe in a day where you're giving Ohtani a day off. And surprise, surprise, a veteran team. I don't mean, spoiler alert, they will have injuries.
Yeah,
I'm going to make that. I'm going to go to FanDuel and make that bet. And I guarantee you, I'll get my $300 in bonus bets. And you should sign up there today. Well, look, when we come back, there's one other thing floating in the ether, and that is bigger than the free agents. Another team that could be signed is the team. Thanks so much for making Locked On MLB or Locked On Padres your first listen. If I'm your first listen, have Javier be your second listen. If Javier is your first listen, have me be the second listen. You see how it works? That's what makes us the number one
network, man. Number one.
By the way, I got my Locked On rain jacket the other day, and that was good because the other day it was raining so hard that we started gathering animals in twos. All right, the Padres could be up for sale, and a new ownership could come in, and it's a weird situation because a lot of times they start dumping bodies over the side to make it a more affordable price or something like that. And a new owner may come in and say, "Oh, well, we better start cutting costs here because this Pepperidge Farm remembers we got to cut the costs in this thing here." Or you could come in with someone saying, like firing guns like Yosemite Sam, say, "I got the rootinest, tootinest, I'm going to spend more money," like a riverboat gambler.
Another Steve Cohen,
The one thing that makes San Diego interesting is they have good attendance. They have some stars signed to long-term deals already. And they don't have to worry about a stadium situation because they have arguably the best stadium, or certainly one of the best stadiums in all of baseball. So a new ownership could come in and tear it to the ground, or a new ownership could come in and want to be start dealing the cards there. What are the thoughts of a new ownership coming in, and what are the hopes, wishes, dreams, and fears?
I think that it is just as fair as it is to emphasize like how Padres fans are super nervous right now. It's also equally fair to bring up like good things like you just brought up. This is not like the Angels, who remember when Art Moreno did the fake out of selling the team? Every Angels fan was like throwing a party in the streets, and he's like, just kidding, and they got ruined. Well, that team just lost Shohei, right? Mike Trout's at the end of his rope. For the Padres, you're the only pro team. I know they have the waves. I'm talking about like of the major sports. Pro team, hockey, baseball, like football and basketball. You're the only pro team right there. You're top level in attendance, and they have a lot of contracts that are long term. So even if they wanted to break it down, that probably wouldn't be something you do immediately. Now we'll have to see. A lot of people are worried that Tatis's salary goes up soon. If the team is bad and they have new ownership that does want to cut costs, they could say, well, that's our asset. We're going to trade him for a bunch of prospects, yada, yada, yada. Although I'm telling you right now, they would not get nearly as many prospects as people think because he's getting paid a lot. And when that happens, since most teams in baseball don't actually care about winning, they will say, we're not getting that player. He has a big contract, right? Even if he's worth it, which he is right now. So that is a fear. But I do think that there are some things in their favor. They have really high home attendance. But I will, Sully, just because I've been a little bit of a hater on today's show, you know dang well that if the Padres do get an owner that cuts costs, the media that's been talking about how everybody should spend like the Dodgers will suddenly be very quiet about the fact that the Padres are going through it now, right? And because I know it. I saw the broadcast last year. They brought up Manny Machado slinging a ball into the dugout more than our guys getting hit by balls, our owner passing away, and all that stuff. So we're hoping it doesn't go that way, because if I'm an owner, I say, man, at the very bit of AJ Preller ain't boring. You know, maybe you could argue about some of his trades and moves not being great, but boring? That is absolutely not what AJ Preller is. He will trade every top prospect that he has to get a star player. He will do whatever it takes he thinks to win. So there is at least some appealing reason to go for this team, a baseball team, which I know that those aren't as desirable as basketball and football these days, but there is a reason for people to go in. And if that happens, man, what if they're like, screw you, LA, let's go for it.
And you're seeing, and again, this is one reason why you notice I was doing a little of this action.
Yeah.
We're seeing that baseball's popularity is starting to peak. Well, let me make this very clear. I don't really care about television ratings. I really don't. People bring up the ratings of this or the ratings of that. I really don't care. Because it doesn't affect my fandom. You know, I'm not a sales rep for Tide. Okay. I'm not selling ad space for my product. That being said, seeing that this last World Series evidently had ratings that went through the roof, and people's interest in that World Series seemed to be skyrocketing. Now, I live in Los Angeles County, so therefore of course it's going to be talk of everything where I'm living. But I was getting notes from people living in Boston, people living in Detroit, people living in Atlanta, who were sending me stuff. I'm staying up all night watching these games. I think a lot of people got hooked on this World Series. I think a lot of people got hooked in this playoffs that had a lot of great games, not just in the World Series, the extra inning do or die game between Seattle and Detroit. You saw there were some exciting games between Boston and New York. You saw exciting games that were going on in the series with in between Los Angeles and Philadelphia, and the great Shohei game that I attended, where he, where he, he threw out pitched 6 innings and hit 3 homers.
The Brewers lost again? Wow.
I know.
The Brewers looked terrible once they had to face actual real teams. Wow. Who would have? It's almost like they should spend a little bit. I don't know. I might be crazy though.
But I think that you're seeing, if you're investing, you want to invest in a sport that seems to be ticking up. Every once in a while, people regain their interest in baseball. And if you're taking interest in San Diego, as you said, you're the only major game in town. Fans have shown up big time. And they have that kind of fandom, that chip on your shoulder fandom that is really hard to cultivate. I've said for years that San Diego fans are the most underrated misery of any sports fan base in America. I've called them Buffalo by the Sea because their Chargers lost heartbreaking games. They lost the freaking Chargers to LA. The Clippers, they lost to LA. The Padres have won 1 World Series game in their history, despite having superstars, Hall of Famers on their club. Yeah. And that's sort of the only reason why they're not mentioned in the same breath as like when Cub fans or Red Sox fans or Buffalo Bills fans or Cleveland fans all over is because the weather's nicer.
Yeah,
you need to have that shoveling a driveway while wondering why John McNamara left Calvin Schiraldi in, or why the Browns couldn't beat John Elway or whatever. You need to shovel that driveway thinking about Jose Mesa instead of cutting a tube in San Diego while surfing. But that in sense adds to the misery of San Diego fans because they don't have that national sympathy. I think an owner can come in, think about the bar you have to leap, get us to the World Series. I mean, look, I know obviously Padres fans want to win it all, but even just a pennant at this point.
Yeah.
But you also have a whole bunch of players, including, I'll bring them up. You brought him up, Manny Machado, who has done everything but show up in the postseason. And he is having a career that when I know Dodger fans, cover your ears.
Yeah.
But when he's retired, people are going to bring up the Cooperstown argument with him. And he has not had that legacy moment in the postseason, despite getting to the postseason with Baltimore, Los Angeles, and San Diego. That his career OPS in the postseason is 286. His career batting average is 209.
Yeah.
He is a lousy postseason performer by all metrics.
Yeah.
And if you're an owner, you could say, I have a team that if I win it all, I'll be the biggest hero you ever saw in San Diego history.
It's possible, man. It's possible because there are so many other teams. Like, look at the White Sox, right? I remember the White Sox being brought up that Jerry Reinsdorf, in my opinion, the worst owner in sports. Like, I remember that got brought up. It's not getting a lot of traction. It's like, well, you look at that. It's like they don't have a lot of money spent. They don't have a lot of stars. Their prospects haven't broken through anything like that yet. The A's, they
A's are the worst. That's the worst owner in sports.
No, I know. It's still him. I know, but my other one is my guy Reinsdorf, just because he's ruined 2 teams. I think he's like it's like Fisher, and then right there is Jerry Reinsdorf. But you look at some of those teams, they didn't have as much fun here, right? Like Tatis by himself. I mean, in terms of just popularity, it's like Shohei, and then you've got some, Aaron Judge, Cal Raleigh now. Tatis is still one of the 6 or 7 most popular players in baseball, whether you want to just view the fact that he's fun as heck to watch, whether it be admittedly some crazy stories that he's had over the years with the motorcycle and etc. And also just the fact that he's a really great player and his jersey always sells out. There's a reason why they had that new Era Cap commercial during the postseason. It was featuring him, right? Like he is one of the league's biggest stars. Right. And you have Jackson Merrill, too, who we haven't actually talked about. Right. You have the number 2. You have the sidekick, the Robin, potentially, although some might even argue that he'll be the Batman compared to Tatis. Right. But you have those 2. You've got a guy who's going to be a Hall of Famer. You've got a manager who's a super rock star who's ready to make a move at all times. And while, yes, payroll is a big part of that, there's other teams that have a big payroll or at least have owners willing to spend that their GM just freezes. I'm looking at you, Baltimore. Right. And it used to be Atlanta as well. So I think that there is at least, unlike other teams that are being looked to sold, there is at least some cool things in their favor for why someone might be interested in purchasing them. But it's also going to be tough because these guys aren't getting any younger. You have a lot of contracts that get a little bit backloaded. And right now, I mean, I saw a Bleacher Report article that was saying they think that the Padres rotation is going to be Nick Pivetta, Joe Musgrove, pretty good. Then Randy Vasquez, Luke Weaver, and John Duplantier, right? I don't think it's going to be that for what it's worth, but there are some very giant red flags too. I'm just hoping someone says, let's let it ride. At the very minimum, I don't have to compete with any other team in San Diego. It's all mine, right? Like we get to be the guys. And like you said, if you bring a championship here, you become like a king, right? You could probably run for office if that were the case, right? So.
All right. Well, Javier Reyes, we got to wrap up this show. I am going to bring up the trivia question, which is what member of the original 1969 Padres received points in that year's MVP vote?
Ooh, that's an old school one. This is what they were even good.
And very specifically worded, what member of the 1969 Padres received points in that year's MVP vote? Put the trivia question right down there. All right, we are here. This has been a Locked On MLB, Locked On Padres crossover. He's Javi Reyes. Follow him at Javi Peño on Twitter, or whatever they call it these days. And subscribe to them wherever you listen to your podcasts and on the YouTubes. Same thing with me. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about your San Diego Padres. Of course, I brought up the Gary Coleman film. And if you're going to buy the team, guess what? You're going to have a lot of cool perks. You're not going to get into some other squads. This has been a Locked On MLB, Locked On Padres crossover. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. He's Javier Reyes, but please call me Sully. Please don't call Javi Sully. We're not going through that again.
Nope. Don't want to do that. No one wants to see it.
No one wants to see that. Not even a little bit.
Nope.